Well guys, hopefully you had a chance to see Thor the Dark World already, because this review is going to be spoiler filled. I got a lot of requests to do a spoiler filled review of Thor the Dark World. I try to do it with all the big comic book films. Generally my fiance Sam joins me for these spoiler reviews, but she was not able to make it for this video, so let's get started on the spoiler review of Thor the Dark World. Now right off the bat, this movie opens with a narration that explains everything, and I always kind of thought that was a weak way to tell a story. It's kind of like this cop-out where you're like, we don't really know how to tell this incredibly complicated story, so we'll do it through narration because that's the best we can do. And that's one of the hardest things about the Thor comics, is that they're so out there and there's so much information and so much backstory and so much lore that it's really hard to be able to fit it into these more grounded Marvel films that they're also making at the same time. But they do a really good job with it. I overall really enjoyed Thor the Dark World. I had a lot of fun with the movie, as I said in my original review. It was actually a film that I enjoyed a little bit more than the first one, which is what I essentially wanted. We see Natalie Portman and Kat Dennings, and they're observing things again, and they're looking for things, and she misses Thor, and Kat Dennings is annoying as hell, but she's there, and whoopity-doo. There's also an intern there now that also not... The whole human element of the Thor movies I thought was always the weakest, but we immediately get to go off and see Thor in battle with Sif, and it's awesome. His first appearance in this movie is awesome. He just zaps into frame, he takes his hammer, he slams it on the ground, a whole bunch of people go down, and Sif is like, I have this under control, and Thor's like, then why is everything on fire? And then all these guys just slam into him and basically tackle him. It was a great shot. I thought it was exactly what I wanted out of Thor. It showed this great essence of fun, where Thor loves being in battle. That's just what he adores doing. And I kind of thought that element of fun was missing from the first Thor, because they showed him in battle in the beginning and he was having a lot of fun in the first movie, but then they said he was too prideful and too haughty and he needed to learn humility. And so when he finally did get to fight, it was so serious and like, I'm Thor and now I know my destiny. That essence of fun was sort of missing from it, in my opinion. At the same time, going on in the background is this dark elf Malekith, planning to harness this ether, the stuff that he can use to control the universe and bring darkness upon everything. He's a really weak villain, in my opinion. Felt like a Star Trek episode from the old series, and there were certain elements of that whole villainy thing that I just felt was not anywhere near as good as Loki, who is in this movie and is awesome. There's not enough of him though, because he's just freaking awesome. And yes, I understand you can have too much of a good thing, but I wanted more of Loki. And later on in the movie, there was this really great scene that I really liked where Thor approaches Loki's chamber and he has this illusion of himself looking all proper after Thor's mother is killed. And Thor's like, enough with these games, Loki, and Loki reveals himself for what he really is. His room is trashed, there's stuff all over the walls. He's sitting in the corner all tattered, he's not wearing his shoes. He doesn't care anymore. His mom's dead, he's so upset, he just wants revenge. It's all I can think about. And I really like that about that scene, because one of the coolest things about the Loki character, despite the fact that he's a great villain, he's funny, he's entertaining, he has a human side to him as well, where you can actually kind of connect to him, and that's one of the reasons he's such a good villain. Thor and Loki decide to team up because these dark elves have taken over Asgard, they killed a whole bunch of people, their ships crashed into everything, and they killed their mother. So they're going to steal one of these ships in this humongously epic plan that involves treason, and they're going to zoom off in this Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith space battle-esque thing. I enjoyed it though, I had a good time with it. Natalie Portman was there as well. That's Padme. That's interesting. But before they escape, you get one of the coolest cameos I've seen in any Marvel movie, and that was Chris Evans as Captain America. That was great. The theater erupted. It was very well timed. I thought it was hilarious. It really added something to the movie. It was also really nice to see one of the Avengers in another Marvel movie that happened after the Avengers, because that's one of the things that a lot of people have been like, you know, okay, I get that all this is going on. The Avengers already teamed up, so why aren't they helping this situation? I get Thor, that makes sense, because not everyone can just go zap to Asgard at any time. However, in Iron Man 3, I was like, you know, why doesn't the Hulk just show up and help out? You know what I mean? And so that really felt right, to actually have one of the Avengers show up, even if it was fake. I know it wasn't actually one of the Avengers, but it just felt right. Now my favorite scene in the entire movie came next, and that is where Thor and Loki meet with Malekith and Curse, and there's this giant battle that erupts. Basically, Loki stabs Thor. You think, oh wow, yeah, he actually betrayed him. He falls down the mountain. Then he cuts off Thor's hand as Thor is trying to get his hammer. And unfortunately, I had heard on the internet from various Comic-Con leaks and stupid news articles that made this their actual headline: Thor loses his arm in Thor 2. And I was like, well, that's great. Nice to know that, because when that scene happened, it didn't really surprise me. What did surprise me, though, was when Thor revealed that it was actually just a giant scheme and Loki was in on it the whole time. I was like, that's awesome. That is awesome. That's the coolest scene in this whole movie. Because it also had a great fight with Curse, which is something that I thought was totally missing from the main villain. I didn't find the main villain threatening or imposing in any way, mentally or physically. That whole scene was great. They zapped that stuff out of Natalie Portman. You think she's gonna die. And then the whole Loki death happened. You got to see Chris Hemsworth giving a great performance as a superhero with long hair and a red cape, and it worked. Like, it worked. I like that about Thor. The fact that they were able to take this really out there story that's so different and, you know, very difficult to ground in some form of reality and actually make you care. But I was also thinking, that would really suck if Loki was dead right now. I'd be kind of pissed. It's like killing off the best character in your whole thing. You know, it's Loki. And Tom Hiddleston just rocks it. And I was like, no, he can't. That's not a good idea. And they didn't really hold the whole mystery of him being dead for very long. They immediately showed that other soldier and you're like, yeah, that's Loki. It didn't really last that long. I was surprised by that too, because it was like, okay, they killed Loki. If they really killed him, that sucks. But they didn't really leave the suspense for that long. It's perhaps because they knew fans would be really pissed if Loki was dead. So maybe they were like, well, we better not hold that suspense for too long. There's the guy, that's Loki. You'll figure that out yourself later. So a lot of things happen. Stellan Skarsgård's running around naked. It's funny. Darcy and the intern are having romances again. Okay, I guess. There's a giant epic end fight between Thor and this guy. He's zapping between galaxies. It's awesome. I just wish the villain was better than he was. The intern like picks up a floating car and crushes some elves with it. That was just really dumb to me. That whole thing could have been gone from this movie. Totally gone. We get that awesome fanboy moment where Thor in slow motion is like running with his hammer. It's this big epic thing. He's like, "Rah!" Boom. I mean, that's basically what Thor is. He hits things with his hammer. And it's awesome. All is right in the world again. Thor is approaching his father, Odin. You saw Anthony Hopkins early in the movie have a moment where he sort of leans over and he was like, ooh, I don't feel good. And then he just sort of forgets about it, hinting that, you know, he's not in the best of health. He has a conversation with Odin that was very pro-Loki. I wonder what's going on there. Thor walks away and it's revealed that Loki was impersonating his father the entire time. Now, I don't know how many times they're going to use the whole Loki is impersonating someone or Loki is not actually there, his illusion or what. But Thor always seems to fall for it, because Loki impersonating Odin means that he finally has the throne to himself, and he is going to use that form to rule. Now that's pretty cool, because that could take Thor 3 in a very interesting direction. I mean, to have Thor figuring out things with his father, and is that Loki, figuring out where Anthony Hopkins is, the deception that Loki could possibly use in that position, that is just ripe with great story elements. I don't think they'll do that in Avengers 2. That's way too much heavy stuff to just talk about in Avengers 2. It might be hinted at, but I feel like with these movies and so many characters that it just has to be like as condensed a story as possible. So I feel like that probably will be saved for Thor 3. Now we have 2 end credit scenes. Let's just talk about the least interesting one first. That's at the very end. Thor comes back to Earth. He kisses Natalie Portman. It's like a romance movie all of a sudden for some reason. And then one of the space creatures is jumping around. And that was pretty funny. That was entertaining. I enjoyed seeing that, because it was sort of like a Breaking Bad finale moment where you're like, hey, what happened to Huel? He's just in the safe house still, isn't he? Well, that sucks. Because at the end of the Thor, you're like, hey, what happened to that giant creature? I guess he's just running around on Earth. Now, I don't know if that means that Thor is going to stay on Earth, or if he's just going to come back every once in a while for a booty call. Either way, please don't stay on Earth. Asgard is much more interesting than Earth. Thank you. But the one before that is definitely the more interesting one, and that is the one that hypes Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, you got Benicio del Toro in there as the Collector, and he's like, oh yeah. I'll be honest with you, I was like, what? That's kind of weird. I have a feeling that Guardians of the Galaxy is the type of movie that benefits from being there from scene 1, so you can kind of get into that oddness, you know, not just be like, here's this world, it's weird. You know what I mean? Because hopefully from scene 1 of Guardians of the Galaxy, you can actually be like, yes, this is what the movie is going to be like. So he takes this thing from Lady Sif and Volstagg, and you're wondering what that is. It is the Ether. It's one of the Infinity Stones that will eventually assemble to create the Infinity Gauntlet, which is this giant form of power. This guy collects everything, and it has something to do with Guardians of the Galaxy, which we will find out very soon. Could lead to big epic things. Every single Marvel ending is always something cool and interesting that everyone is always wanting to see. Every time I go to a Marvel movie, I'm like, why are people getting up? Why are you... It's not over. There's gonna be a thing. It's every time. There's gonna be something. All in all, I really enjoyed Thor the Dark World, as you know. There were things about it that surprised me. There were weak story elements to it as well. The whole human thing, I just feel like can be trashed. But I understand Thor has to be connected with Earth in some way so that he can have something to do in the Avengers. So what did you guys think of the movie now that you've seen it? Hopefully you have seen it before you watch this video, because I just told you everything that happens, unless you don't give a crap. And that's cool too, I guess. Guys, thanks as always very much for watching, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.